Hey Simonics, what's up? Welcome to a new year of Ionic greatness. I hope you enjoyed the calendar we had in the last month, and today we are directly starting the year strong with a tutorial you've been basically requesting since Ionic 4 came out, and that is swipeable tabs with Ionic. I monitored the package which was used in the last versions called Ionic Super Tabs, and since a few weeks this is now ready for Ionic 4, so let's build this. What I did so far is I created a blank new Ionic application and I installed the current version of the Ionic Super Tabs package. I also added a bunch of pages. So these 3 pages will be our tabs and this one will be a details page. So I want to show you different use cases of this package because it isn't always clear how to use it and it can be a bit complicated. So we will cover a lot of cases in this quick win, which is more like a regular big post. Anyhow, so go ahead, run all of these things. I also already started my Ionic Serve, which is currently a blank application. And then we can continue. First of all, we have to include the Super Tabs module right in our app module. And in here, call it just like many other packages with for root. So there we go. That's the first step. Second step is in one of your pages, you basically define the markup for the tabs. And we will pick the home page because that's already anyway in our package. So let's move over to the home module, and in here we also have to include the Super Tabs module again, just like before. Now I will bring in a basic example now, which can be used of course, but which won't be that useful, I guess. So first of all, let me show you how it looks. So this is how it looks. I can click on the tabs and I could now also swipe through them. We could have it at the top or at the bottom. I will just for now leave it at the top. So here's the markup. You basically have a Super Tabs container containing everything for the tabs. We also have the Ion header above. That's what you see in this area. Inside the tabs, we first of all have the Super Tabs toolbar container. So it is really similar to how the usual or standard Ionic tabs are set up. And in here in the toolbar, you can define the color, the slot. You can also specify a configuration file. We will skip this for now, but you can simply go to the documentation of the Super Tabs. And then inside the configuration, you will see all the values that you can specify, especially if you have a side menu, this becomes more interesting. Now, in the toolbar, we then define the actual tab buttons. In our case, we want to have 3 tabs, so we're going to have 3 descriptions, each with an icon and label. You can also have a lot more and specify the toolbar to be scrollable, or I think scrollable. So then you could also scroll through the tabs in the tab bar. That's the first block. The second block is the Super Tabs container. And in here we will have the content for each page. As you can see right now, we create 3 Super Tab components and each of them holds an Ion content. So that's what I wanted to say in the beginning. This is, of course, a way to go. And as you can see, it works perfectly. But normally you have your own pages or own navigation applied to these different tabs, just like you're used from the Ionic tabs. So what we're going to do is we're going to inject a custom Ion nav component into each of them, and then try to load the real page that we already created in the beginning, so about, account, and news, into these slots. And for this, let me quickly bring in the code because we got a lot to do today. So the only thing we changed is inside the Ion content, we now have an Ion nav element. And for each of them, you have to specify a root page. So we need root for news, account, and about. Let's go ahead and you will see why this is a bit tricky and how we can fix the errors that we encounter along the way. So all 3 of them go into our home page, and then we can set them directly to the real component of the page. So about page. As you can see, all three of them import now the page. The first thing that we see is, let's see, the first error, no component factory found for news page. Did you add it to entry components? No, of course we didn't. So we can now do, well, I will just show you the real thing that you should do. Let's try to fix the news page. The problem is that we need to define the entry components right here as an array just with a news page. And we have to do this for the about page and the account page as well. So maybe let's do this, account module, entry components, account page, and then about, same procedure, entry components, about page. There we go. Let's see how this looks now. Okay. No component factory found. Did you add it to entry components? Well, yes, we did, but we haven't added it to our ng module. So we have to go back to home module, and now import all the module files of these three pages, which means the news page module, the account page module, and also the about page module. All right, now everything should hopefully work. But we see suddenly our complete view looks different. And this is because the module files of our pages with Ionic have their own routing in place. And that is a problem in here. So as an alternative, we could also simply create components that we show, because components normally don't have a routing. But for our regular pages that we create with the Ionic CLI, all of them have at some point a routing. So with Ionic 5, they even have a separate routing module. Previously, we just had the entry with routes in here and for child. So we have to get rid of this. In our case, we can simply remove the dependency, and also if you want, you can also delete the page. And again, do this for all the three tabs that we want to use. So remove the routing stuff from each of them and from news as well. Delete the file, delete the reference to the routing module. And now we're not importing any more routing stuff into our module, and we should hopefully see now that, come on, this was the moment where it should immediately work. Why is it not loading? You're destroying my great video, Ionic CLI. So perhaps I will have to reload the serve. But what you can do, and what we should talk about as well right now, is this routing. Normally we create all the routing in our app routing or in the child routing. But with the super tabs module, we can basically remove all of these things, simply because the routing completely happens with these custom nav containers that we define. And when you use them, I will really just restart the Ionic serve. When you use them, you don't have the Angular routing in place, but just a custom routing, more like Ionic 3, I would say. And therefore the URL isn't really changing, and therefore I don't think the super tabs is currently suited for the web. So if you plan to build your Ionic app for the web, this can be a bit complicated, okay? But anyway, when our loading comes back, I will hopefully have everything in place. So each of our modules should look the same. The routing is gone. It declares the entry component, which is the page basically assigned to the module. And we have to import all of the modules into the basic module where we define the super tabs. So that's why I said in the beginning, it is a bit complicated and it can be a bit tricky as well. And if this reload is coming back now, we can also continue. I think I haven't defined anything else so far, so we should be good to move a step forward. And with that, I mean, we want to have an inside navigation now. So there we go. Our navigation is back. We now see that we actually got the real pages loading right in there. Actually, the color isn't looking that cool, so I will just quickly apply 2 CSS variables, and we will do this in our theme folder, or we could also do this in a global folder. The super tabs colors or CSS variables are explained in the configuration, and right now I just targeted the color active and inactive to make the tab bar more, well, look better. All right, that's cool for now. As you can see, most of the time you don't want to have a real header in your pages. So let's move to the news page and tweak it a bit. I think we could also get rid of the Ion content since we are already inside an Ion content, but for now I will just leave it in there. And now we want to work with our navigation and move around a bit in the app. So that was now the basic shell for our application, and now we want to do more. So we want to open the details page, which we haven't touched so far. We want to go to the About tab. Sometimes you just have to select another tab. And we also want to go, or I want to show you another way to go to the details page using the Ion Nav link. We can use this since we are in the Ion Nav container now. And with Ionic 5, it is now called Ion Nav link. I think previously we had Ion Nav push and pop. They are deprecated as far as I know. So we can also have the same behavior. Basically, this and this should do the same. So let's go ahead and add the open new details page and also open about this one. And then we already see for the Ion Nav link, we again have to specify a component. And you should now get a bit used to how this works. If you want to specify it, news details page. What will happen? Question for the viewer. We will encounter an error once we click on the button. Did you add it to entry components? Of course we didn't. So we go back to the news details module. Entry components. There we go. And I think we also don't want to have the routing for this page. So again, remove this. And then we still need to load it in the news module because we have added it to the entry components, but we haven't added it to the ng module. So news details page module. And then finally, we are hopefully set to use the nav link. That's exactly what's happening, and I'm not sure why. I think Ionic has a problem since I removed the routing file here. Okay, thanks for this. There we are on the news details page. I can even switch tabs and go back, but right now we're not having the option to go back from the details page to the overview page, but we will get to this in a second as well. So that means our nav link is working fine in our container. And now we can focus on the 2 other functions. I know this is a lot of content for this video. If you got questions, just leave them below. We are exploring this package basically together right now. So open details means we want to do the same thing that the Ion Nav link did. And we can do this by injecting the Ion Nav right here and simply using it from code. So this nav push. And I know what you think, this is like Ionic 3, but this is how we can use a custom navigation also inside a modal or any other view. I think we had a video on this in our calendar as well. So this will push a new page. If we want to interact with the super tabs from anywhere inside our application, we can do the same thing, super tabs, and import the super tabs. And then simply call this dot super tabs, and then you already see active tab, index config, select tab, set config, tab change. What we want to do, of course, is select tab number 2, which is 012, the 3rd tab. So let's see. Open details from code works great. We can't go back, so I should have tried the other option. Select about tab directly brings us to about, and this one still works. All right, that's cool. We're gonna take this one step further. We have to move back from the new details. So we wanna make our navigation complete. And to do so, once again, two options to do this. You can either on the new details page define an Ion back button, which will automatically pick up if you can go back. Or once again, you can do this from code. The same, just like before, you inject the private navigation Ion nav, and then this nav pop should bring us back. There are also more methods like set root or pop to root, so you can really play around a bit more with that package if you want to. So now we can go to details and we can nicely move back. We can also trigger the button, so everything works. One note, on a device, this doesn't really look good. So to take the final step now in our application is to work with the global header here of the Swipeable tabs container. This doesn't really look as good as I wish to. Perhaps there will be better solutions in the future, but I wanted to show you how you can get rid of this bar and instead have the back button at the top. So I think that should or will look definitely better. And to do so, we are going back to the home page. And since we are now listening to this navigation container of the news page, we want to directly access it. We can't use just the global Ion nav, that won't work. But we already said that this is the news nav, and now we can of course access it as a view child from our view. So add all missing imports, the Ion nav and the view child. And then we can once again have the same go back behavior directly on our news navigation to really just target this one container. One more thing we have to get clear here. If we are now going to display a button all the time inside our toolbar like this, so without can go back, or let's just do this away, then it will look like this. And of course, that is not the behavior we need. So this will trigger errors, and we're on the root page, so we don't want to have a back button. So that means we have to prevent this and check if we can actually go back. And now things get even more tricky. But I hope you're still with me. So it really took me some time to figure this out, or a solution for this. What we need to do to get this done is we need to listen to our news nav, and this one is only initialized after the view is ready. So we go ahead with implements after view init, and this is like ng view, ng on init, but after basically. And then we're gonna use the news navigation, and the Ion nav did change. Will change is a bit too early. We have to listen for did change, and we can subscribe to this. It's an observable that returns a nice event. And at this point, we can now check if the navigation, the news nav, can actually go back. And we can set this to our own can go back. So this can go back equals this news nav can go back. And as you can see, I hope my face is not covering this, it is a promise returned. So we will receive an error. That means we can simply say await for this. And if we use await, we have to mark the function as async. All right, now whenever the navigation changes, and let's lock this, change. Whenever the navigation in this news nav container changes, we will receive information about this. Where's my log? There we go. Let's go back, change, and again change. As I said, it's not perfect because as you can see, we go back and normally we got this nice animation here. But since we're handling everything manually, it takes a little second or so until this button appears. But then we can definitely use this button, and we could now get rid of the ugly header bar that is completely out of place in here. Now, as a final step, you perhaps also want to change this global title here. I'm not sure if you could do this from the pages, but here's a simple solution. Just make it a variable. Let's set our title in the beginning in the home page to, I think we're starting on the news page. And then what we can do is we can also get events from these super tabs once the tab changes. So I think in the super tabs definition, add the tab change, and then I will bring in the code for our on tab change, which looks like this. So we're receiving the event. You can import this if you want to, or just have it as any, and then switch to which index we changed, and based on that, simply change the title. If you want to have this more sophisticated, you could also set up a service, a subject, and then basically whenever you change pages, emit the new value on that service and listen for it on here. So if you're working with a lot of details and more details pages and really want to change this, then this service approach might make more sense. But right now, that's all we need to change the title of the tabs, and then we see that everything is working in our application. So I hope you enjoyed this. I think rather, 20 minutes quick win. Well, not so quick win to kick off this year. If you got any questions, feel free to leave them below. The super tabs might still change. I think I used version 6.1 alpha or something like this. So check out the GitHub repository of the super tabs if you got any other questions or issues with the package. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, please subscribe. Once again, this year aiming for 100k subscribers, but maybe we will not get this year. Anyway, I hope to see you as well inside the Academy. If you're not yet signed up, just check it out, ionicacademy.com, with more great Ionic content. So let's rock this year with Ionic. Stay subscribed, and I will catch you inside the next video.